this one is going to be a little different. For those of you who are new here, I am JoJo, or Unstoppable. A lot of things have been in this topic of discussion. It's the end of the year. People need something to talk about. People need a rhetoric that is continuum. So that is why I am titling this video the 5-year discussion, because if we go back to 2019, that was the year that, quote unquote, Eugenia decided to, quote unquote, get recovery or get help, right? And you had, I guess you could say, like, an online therapist, as far as like the online persona in psychology, as far as the individual that will not be named here, because I'm not getting into the semantics of everything, and I know that a lot of you guys prefer to debate, argue, do with what you may, but that's not why I'm doing this video. I feel like a lot of people are going back and forth, and it's the reason why they're discussing Eugenia Cooney. And I would say every year there is some type of quote-unquote controversy, some type of reasoning for people discussing her. As far as like raising awareness, I don't know if it's the fact that you guys want to push the discussion as far as of what not to do if you're someone that's struggling with food, like whether it's food issues, whether it's suppressing your feelings online. And make no mistake, Eugenia has never actually fully explained what she deals with. Obviously, she is not thin. I know that a lot of you guys want to place her as thin. She is emaciated. Okay, she is scaring people. When you are at the level of scaring people, you are classified as emaciated. There's something there. She does, unfortunately, brag about her weight. I've seen shorts. I've witnessed a lot of like discussions as far as her weight, body checks, and things of that nature. Obviously, body checks of social media and the newer ways of doing things as far as technology is implemented with eating disorders in this day and age. So typical behaviors that those of us who have dealt with this and those of us who have beaten the eating disorder aren't going to be the same type of behaviors that you see nowadays, compared to the fashion magazines, compared to watching runway models or watching thin actresses on TV and people making, anorexic and bulimic jokes, so on and so forth. I would say that the reason Eugenia Cooney is the pinnacle of eating disorders is because of her small stature, as far as obviously the skin and bones, and then her being childlike with all of the stuffed animals, all of the plushies-ish type of deals. You also have like the way she talks, like clearly that's not her real voice, because I've listened to her streams, and there are some instances where she'll change her voice, and then some instances where she talks normal. So I think that's a persona thing. I think it's also her being nervous. Now, I normally don't like discussing Eugenia because I feel like it doesn't help anything. I feel like this doesn't do anything for anybody, whether it's the audience, whether it's the viewers, as far as like other social media platforms, right? But I did want to give you guys maybe like a different sense of maybe what's really going on here, or maybe like a different way of thinking when it comes to someone similar to Eugenia, in the sense that they're not admitting that they have an issue, or maybe, I mean, I don't, to be fair, I don't understand the like putting her at fault entirely as far as influencing kids, as far as eating disorder, because the reason I say this is because you can't really put someone at fault for another person's behavior. Like, to me, that does not add up. Okay? That's like saying I became, anorexic and bulimic because I saw somebody else do the same thing. That's not how that works. So I would say the majority of people that have an eating disorder that feel like they were her inspiration, or they were quote unquote influenced by her to starve themselves, right? I would say if that is your story as far as someone who has an eating disorder, then I'm going to need you guys to be fully honest, because a lot of individuals, unfortunately, the reason that they not only develop the eating disorder, but it's really hard to stop. It is like, I would say, for me, and I have other overlapping addictions that I have recovered from, I would say that eating disorders are the toughest to get through. That is the hardest to let go of and actually allow yourself to eat and allow yourself to enjoy food, in a sense, because once the eating disorder has a hold of you, there is no coming back from that. You can recover from the disorder for 10 plus years, and you're still going to have the back of that mindset, For me, individually, my OCD, body dysmorphia, all intertwine with the rituals of an eating disorder. I consider it a OCD trait, because of the consumption between the obsessing and then the ritualistic acts of the behaviors when it comes to the eating disorder. And then the body dysmorphia just triggers that. So even though I have not done behaviors, and it'll be 17 years next year, even though I have not done any behaviors, that'll always be in the back of my head. That'll always be something that's going to be an issue. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily like certain things will trigger, but it just really depends on what that may entail and what that may do in the future. But I feel like the people that have that story, as far as they say, oh, well, she influenced me, or she, she's the reason why I have an eating disorder. That's not why eating disorders exist. If you go back in time, in history, that there's been documentation of anorexia and bulimia for many, many, many different reasons, but a lot of the times it has to do with rituals. A lot of the times it has to do with suppressing your actual carnal appetite to voice what you needed to say, or in this instance, not actually saying what you need to say. But I feel like it really, really, really tarnishes those of us that have worked our asses off to get to the point where we need to, where we just decide to eat because, push comes to shove. You just gotta get it together. You gotta, you can't live in the past anymore. You have to just move forward and push through, and you can't let media influences or outside influences to keep you from doing what you need to do as far as nourishment. You know what I mean? So I feel like it kind of dismisses those of us that have dealt with severe trauma, and those of us that have dealt with certain incidents and certain events in our lives that may have perpetuated, the eating disorder. For a lot of people, eating disorders run in their family. That would be my case. And it doesn't just have to be like a significant eating disorder. It can just be multiple varieties of it, depending on how that intertwines in your family tree. But I would say that the discussion when it comes to Eugenia Cooney, it just feels like it's severely, fairly, unfortunately, dismissive towards those of us who have worked to do what we need to do and help other people in the long run. If that's, our pathways of trying to get through whatever it is we need to, as far as like mental health and stuff like that. I made a career out of it as far as like helping other people, let alone people with eating disorders, So I understand why influencers or more so like mentors and life coaches and therapists, especially those with an eating disorder, shy away from this topic, because it's not that there's nothing to say. It's more so, what more can we say if, again, it does nothing for ourselves and the people around us discussing her. I feel like she is, at the end of the day, that's what she is. She's an influencer. She doesn't proclaim herself as an eating disorder channel. She doesn't proclaim herself through that platform. But I can see the frustration with a lot of you guys as far as TikTok, because while I don't use TikTok and I don't have a account, I can understand from a lot of individual standpoints with women and girls that are quote unquote pro Anna, and they are banned because they are showing their lifestyle, quote unquote, right? And why she gets like third chances. Like, this is her third chance. Even though she's restricted, she's still allowed back on the platform. Meanwhile, other people that discuss eating disorders, or they try to implement or do what she's doing, and they're getting banned. So I wouldn't say that she isn't an influence, because obviously these girls or these women want to try and implement what she's doing. They see it as, from my understanding, they see it as a grift. They see it as a money grab, so they want to implement and see if they can do the same thing she's doing. So that makes sense. So that I can understand from that standpoint why she's influencing. But as far as like blaming her for your disorder, I'm not going to accept that. I'm sorry. That's not gonna fly with me. Because not eating is the problem. It's not the solution. There's always like an underlying issue behind that. There's a reason why you're not eating. And as simple as the solution is, just to eat, if it were that simple, eating disorders would not exist at all. But that's how it's premised when it comes to Eugenia Cooney. That is how it's looked at towards individuals that don't have an eating disorder, or people that look at us like, to them it's simple, right? To a lot of men and women, it's simple, just eat. But again, the one wouldn't exist without the other, right? So I feel like and it's not just that, not just the dismissal of discussing her. I mean, we've been discussing her for like the last 5 years, and it's the same instance. She's not eating. If she eats, and it's like very, very, very skimp of a bite, like she's barely tearing off whatever it is she's trying to eat, and she's basically proving everyone's point at this time and space. But between her bragging about her weight and then her saying that it's no one's business how much she weighs, it's pretty obvious what she weighs. I can honestly gauge where she's at, only because I was there. I've been there. I've been actually smaller than Eugenia, if you can believe that. I was actually lower than her weight, so that's how I know what weight she's actually at. And for me, it was a lot more detrimental, obviously, as you guys can imagine. For those of you who are new, I have a multitude of disabilities and ailments, but I don't, make a big deal out of them, or I don't let them faze me, because it is what the fuck it is, right? But I do have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and while I was in treatment, I would hate to say this, but professionals and staff felt like they can understand from my standpoint why I would have an eating disorder because of the restriction in food and intake and stuff like that, as far as me being so sensitive to everything when it comes to this illness. And I shouldn't have been hurting myself from that sense as far as not eating, because it makes the pain worse as far as having chronic pain every day, all day, different types of pain. So I can understand from a professional standpoint why it's so dangerous to develop an eating disorder. Me not meaning to, but that was just my way of coping at a very young age. So I feel like it's the same unfortunate discussion when it comes to Eugenia. She needs to get help, or we need to platform her. She needs another 5150. It's the same. I mean, even as far down as writing her eulogy and saying that she only has quote unquote 2 years or 6 months, whatever, right? Everybody has a timeline for her because she's approaching 30, and the older you get, the harder it is on your body as far as this illness. Your body can only sustain for so long, but I just think that that's a horrible thing to do to somebody, and putting that out into the universe, as far as like creating eulogies and stuff like that. And I get that it's a tough love version of getting her to see that she needs to get it together, or she needs to get help, or she needs to do something. At the end of the day, you can't make somebody do something that they don't want to do. So while I understand the awareness portion of what everyone is doing from the channels that I've seen through different platforms, but at the end of the day, it is really up to the individual to decide if they want to look at her content or take her seriously or buy into the persona that she is putting out. You know what I'm saying? So there's only so much we can do as creators, as people that want to, give a sense of what she's actually doing. Another point I wanted to make too, I did find the video, someone sent me the video of the individual that was with her at that stay through the 5150. I did want to point out that a lot of that stuff doesn't make sense, and it just seems like they're perpetuating the rhetoric that has been the topic of discussion for the last 5 years when it comes to the 5150. What I mean by that is a couple of points. So the first thing that popped into my head when I saw the short video was she was throwing tantrums, she was having a fit, she was horrible to be around. Let's be fair, when you're malnourished, you're not you. I've been there. I've been tube fed. I've been where she's at, where you're lashing out and you're just angry. You're hungry, okay? You don't know how much more your body can feed off as far as not eating. Number 2, that she was tube fed because she didn't want to sit with all the other girls. I kind of don't buy into that, only because, you don't get tube fed because you asked them to. You don't get tube fed because you call the shots. That's not how hospitals work, and that's not how treatment facilities work at all. They are in control of everything, and that's why it's really, really, that's why a lot of people lash out as far as people with eating disorders, because you are no longer in control. They take that away from you inside of a unit. So that's why I'm like, that's a little suspicious, but okay. I've never seen any, unless it's depicted in a movie or a TV show, but I have never seen a facility or have heard of a facility that just lets you call the shots as far as your eating disorder. I call BS on that. So the reason why a lot of these points I was like, I don't know about that. While the person may have stayed with her, the last key point that I want to point out is it was stated in that email that it was like the last note, I guess, but she was basically quote unquote forced out. They had to get rid of her. That's why they couldn't put up with her anymore. They had to get rid of her, and that's why she like stopped treatment, right? That's why she refused treatment, quote unquote, right? At 5150, for those of you who aren't like have no clue, it's 72 hours. Sometimes it's implemented for 5 days, depending on how severe you are. But if you are not a threat to yourself or a threat to society, and you're proving that you'll be okay once you go home, or you're proving you'll be okay through the aftercare, then she's fine. Like, there is no getting around that, because it's involuntary, meaning you didn't volunteer yourself, so you don't get to say when you're going to be discharged. That is clearly on the doctor. But because it was out of her awareness, she did not volunteer. Because it was out of her awareness, and she kept telling everybody she was fine, and she may have very well lied to the staff and lied her way out. Let's be fair, a lot of you guys do this. A lot of people that I've seen in treatment, whether it's for mental health, as far as like bipolar or schizophrenia or you name it, I've seen so many people lie their way to treatment. It's not just people with eating disorders. So if we're going by that logic, there's no if, ands, or buts when it comes to an eating disorder. It is the most structured and most restrictive out of all the units that I have witnessed and either have worked with or volunteered with or have been there myself, depending on the actual mental health placement. Obviously there are other units that are going to be more lenient depending on what you're in for, but generally when it comes to ED, it's extremely restrictive, and staff has a level of patience. They have to, because these people are malnourished, they're not in their right minds, they're going to say things they don't mean, they're going to lash out, they're going to do whatever they can to feed into the voices in their head as far as the eating disorder. So it makes sense why she did all the things she did, but what I don't understand is the hypocrisy within the eating disorder community. So I have spoken to a lot of individuals over the years of me mentoring and me helping people out as much as I can, and I don't understand the hypocrisy. Like, this is very common knowledge when it comes to dealing with an eating disorder or recovering or simply not recovering, okay? So I would say the stat is 1 in 4 will pass on that are actually seeking help, okay? This is due to the shock in the body. This is not just for eating disorders, this is any addiction, okay? Your body just ends up going into shock. If you have gone many, many months being, non-active as far as the addiction, and then you relapse, and then your body just, sometimes it just can't deal. So I would say that everything is still, after 5 years later, everything is still speculation. So there's only so much we can do on our end. If you are someone who is raising awareness, I would ask that, it's just a simple thing. It's just a simple suggestion. But I would ask that if you are claiming to raise awareness, at least be upfront about that. Because a lot of people that claim that they raise awareness, they're really looking for something else. There's another agenda behind it, meaning people are just waiting for her to pass on, or people are just waiting to see what her next fault is, or her downfall is. Like, it's pretty obvious with a lot of these channels and a lot of these individuals that are quote-unquote wanting to raise awareness, right? And there are a lot of other people that I've seen that are genuine in talking about certain things and just being open and honest and just being blunt at the end of the day, because there's only so much we can do, and you can't coddle everything. You can't baby everything. And unfortunately, that is the story for a lot of individuals with eating disorders. They didn't want to grow up. They didn't want to take accountability as far as being an adult and, destroying their body and, wreaking havoc as far as people around them. But I can understand from that standpoint too, as far as raising awareness and getting better and getting treatment and getting help. But that is a lot of people's story as far as people with eating disorders, as far as like staying the age that you stayed, kind of like similar to Arrested Development, but in a different sense. And you're staying the same age because you started your addiction at that age. But for a lot of people, like, it's kind of hard to see from everybody's perspective, but you have to kind of take a step back and be well aware of everyone's story is different. Not everyone with an eating disorder is the same. Like, no story is the same, and no reasoning why is the same either. Some people just, unfortunately, like, for like the rest of their lives, so that the eating disorder may have started as they were a kid, but then they go through the rest of their lives in and out of treatment, in and out of, you know, ERs, in and out of contemplation and actually deciding to get help. There is a lot of factors along that, but it is a statistic that it's known, unfortunately, that people that start eating disorders at a very, very young age, like I would say under the age of 10, they unfortunately have a hard time recovering. They may recover, but they have a harder time recovering than the average person. I know a lot of individuals, and I knew of a lot of individuals that were like 10 plus years older than me, and they're still struggling to this day, or they're no longer here. Okay? So obviously this topic is a strong one for me. It hits home, and I've helped a lot of individuals. And I've also, you know, tried to be there for a lot of friends, and I've lost a lot of friends, unfortunately, to this illness. So I can understand from people's standpoint. And is Eugenia's, you know, personal persona as far as like being online, is it a gimmick, or is this something that we need a bigger discussion? Because this may go on again for another 5 years. Who knows? It just depends on how social media moves within the next few years, as far as people with eating disorders, as far as people with mental illness. Should we deplatform a lot of people? I mean, it would be a lot of people that are on social media that you would be getting rid of, as far as get rid of them because of their mental illness, or get rid of them because of their struggle, or get rid of them because of their addiction. You'd be cutting a lot more than half of individuals off of social media. So I just wanted to give you guys that discussion, and let me know what you think in the comments. All right.